Okay, let's unpack this. You're trying to cut through all the noise, get informed quickly, yeah. Especially with something like Bitcoin market signals.
Definitely. It's a lot. You've got charts, news, opinions flying everywhere.
It's easy to get buried. And that's why in this deep dive, we're focusing very specifically on Bitcoin and, well, a technical pattern that the source you shared highlights. It's called the Golden Cross.
Right. We're going to look closely at this one market analysis piece. It really zeroes in on Bitcoin potentially showing this exact pattern.
So our goal here is basically to walk you through the specific source. We want to pull out the key takeaways for you. Like, what is a Golden Cross according to this analysis?
Uh-huh. And how has it performed historically? The source covers times it seemed predictive, but also, importantly, times it really didn't work out.
Exactly. And then what does the analysis suggest this particular signal might mean for Bitcoin's price, now, taking into account all the other factors the source brings up?
Think of it like we're navigating this document together, trying to distill what matters most from it for you.
All right, let's jump right in then. The core idea, the Bitcoin Golden Cross. What is it based on this source?
Okay, so according to this analysis, we're looking at the daily chart. The Golden Cross happens when Bitcoin's 50-day simple moving average. That's usually seen as the faster, shorter-term trend line.
Right.
When that crosses above its 200-day simple moving average, that's the slower, longer-term trend line.
Got it. So shorter-term momentum overtaking the longer-term trend, a potential shift. And the source was saying as of May 20th, that 50-day SMA was right there, poised to cross.
Yeah, exactly. Positioned just below, but eyeing a close above the 200-day. So the source suggests this pattern could actually form maybe by the end of May.
And what makes this interesting is how the source looks back, right, at the history.
Very much so. It points to previous times this Golden Cross showed up for Bitcoin, and, well, often they were followed by some pretty significant price rallies.
Like October 2024, the analysis mentions that one led to, over 60% gains?
That's the figure cited, yeah. And interestingly, the source explicitly connects that, at least partly, to surrounding events. It mentions the reelection of Donald Trump as U.S. president playing a key role.
Okay, so it's not just chart patterns in a vacuum. The source is linking it to real-world context.
Precisely. And there's another example, October 2023. The source notes a Golden Cross then, followed by about a 45% BTC price rally.
And that one was linked to?
The Bitcoin ETF excitement, that whole buildup of euphoria around the ETFs, according to the source.
Right. And it mentions September 2021, too, another crossover, another rally, about 50% gains that time. So just looking at these examples, the source makes it seem like a pretty bullish signal.
It can look that way, yes. But, and this is really crucial, the source is very clear. This is not a guarantee. There's a whole section basically saying, hey, Bitcoin's Golden Crosses can fail.
Oh, that's important.
It really is. The analysis stresses that just looking at past performance for any indicator, well, it isn't a foolproof strategy. You can't just bank on it repeating.
And the big example the source uses to illustrate this failure, that was February 2020, wasn't it?
That's the one. A Golden Cross did form then, according to the source. But what happened next? Not a rally, a huge crash, like 62% down.
Wow. And the source directly links that crash to the wider market chaos, right? The COVID-19 pandemic hitting, the lockdowns.
Exactly, that whole global market, Rob. The analysis says this period, really, and I'm sort of quoting the idea here, it underscores the importance of using Golden Crosses with broader technical and macro indicators. And crucially, factoring in the possibility of completely unexpected events, black swan events,
Yeah. That 2020 example really hammers home the point the analysis is making. You got to look beyond just the lines crossing on a chart.
Absolutely. The pattern exists within a much bigger, sometimes totally unpredictable picture.
Okay, so taking that lesson, that perspective from the source.
Yeah.
How does it view the current situation, this potential cross-forming now around late May?
Well, the analysis suggests that as things stand, this upcoming potential Golden Cross seems to align with mostly supportive fundamentals, which, in the source's view, kind of places the signal on the bullish side, generally speaking.
Supportive fundamentals, what specifically does it mention?
It points to a couple of things. Increasing M2 money supply.
Okay, more liquidity, potentially.
Potentially, yeah. That's often interpreted as more cash floating around, maybe looking for assets like Bitcoin, and also easing U.S.-China trade tensions. The source believes these factors have propelled bets on a new record high for Bitcoin. So it's connecting these big economic trends to BTC sentiment.
Okay, so the source sees that fundamental backdrop as generally positive, but it doesn't just stop there, does it? It flags some technical signals that maybe don't quite line up with a simple up, up, and away story right now.
No, it definitely doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
It highlights some, let's say, cautionary technical signs, too. For instance, the analysis notes Bitcoin's RSI, the relative strength index.
The momentum indicator.
Right. That indicator crossed above 70 earlier in May. And 70 is often seen as the overbought threshold. The implication from the source is that being overbought can often signal a pullback is due.
Okay, so maybe the price ran up a bit too hot, too fast in the short term.
That's one warning sign mentioned. And the source also points to what it calls a growing bearish divergence. This is a bit technical, but it's where the price keeps hitting new highs. But the RSI, that momentum indicator, is actually making lower highs. It's diverging.
Ah, so the upward price moves have less oomph behind them, less momentum.
Exactly. And the source says this specific signal furthers the chances of short-term downside. It suggests weakening buying pressure, even as the price itself is still rising.
Okay, so we have this potential bullish golden cross maybe forming soon, and the source sees some fundamental support. But at the same time, these technical warnings, overbought RSI, this bearish divergence, what does the analysis think happens first, given this mix?
Well, instead of predicting an immediate blast-off right after the cross happens, the source suggests Bitcoin may initially pull back toward its SMA supports.
Pull back? Toward the moving averages?
Yeah. It specifically mentions the range around $92,400 to $95,000 as a potential target area for this pullback. That's based on where those SMA lines were around May 20th.
I see. So the source isn't dismissing the golden cross. It's more suggesting these other signals might cause a dip before any potential larger rally kicks in. Is that the idea?
That seems to be the nuanced short-term implication the source is drawing. Yeah. Weighing all these different signals together. But it's important to add, the analysis also mentions that some other technical indicators it looked at. Well, they see the BTC price rallying toward $150,000 in the coming months.
$150,000. Okay, so a significant potential upside down the line, even if there's a dip first.
That's the longer-term potential mentioned, based on those indicators. And the source even brings in some related commentary it found, like quoting an article title about Bitcoin trading in six figures and mentioning a Fidelity exec suggesting BTC might be ready to take over gold's role, carry its baton.
Interesting. So it's looking at the wider narrative and sentiment, too.
Seems like it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's trying to paint a layered picture. You've got the potentially bullish golden cross forming, lining up with some decent fundamentals, but tempered by these other technical warnings, suggesting maybe some short-term weakness first before maybe, just maybe, a bigger rally later on.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up then. Bring it all together based on this specific source material we've dug into. We looked at the Bitcoin Golden Cross, that's the 50-day SMA, crossing up over the 200-day SMA.
Yep, a technical signal, the article we focused on, things could form by the end of May.
And we went through the history the source provided. It mentioned past crosses like October 24, October 23, September 21.
And noted they often came before big rallies, 45%, 50%, 60% gains. And the source connected those rallies to things happening at the time, like a U.S. election outcome or that whole Bitcoin ETF buzz.
But, and this is key, we also covered the source's big warning example, February 2020, a golden cross happened, but then a massive 62% price crash.
Yeah, which the article directly pinned on the global market shock from the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdowns.
And that example really drives home the source's point, doesn't it? That you can't just look at the cross in isolation. You need broader context, other indicators, and you have to account for the unexpected.
Absolutely. The source emphasizes that past performance, even for patterns like this, is never, ever a guarantee.
So fast forward to now, May 20th, according to the source's snapshot, it mentions some supportive fundamentals, M2 money supply, U.S.-China trade tensions easing, things that it connects to bullish Bitcoin bets.
Right. But then also those conflicting technical signals it flagged, the RSI being overbought earlier in May, and that growing bearish divergence, price up, momentum down.
Which led the source to suggest, what, a possible initial dip first. Back towards those SMA support levels, maybe $92,400 to $95,000.
That was the short-term potential pullback scenario outlined, yeah.
Yeah.
Before possibly a longer-term rally towards that $150,000 level mentioned by some other indicators in the analysis.
And it layered in those wider market thoughts, too, about six-figure trading and the Bitcoin versus gold narrative. So if we had to distill the source's overall message, it seems to be, look, this potential golden cross is generally seen as bullish, and it has some fundamental tailwinds right now, but
You absolutely have to weigh it against other technicals, like that divergence. And you need to remember the bigger picture, the macro factors, and always keep that February 2020 lesson in mind. History isn't destiny, especially in markets.
So this deep dive, really focusing on just this one piece of analysis, hopefully gives you a framework, a way to see how technical patterns get discussed alongside fundamentals and real-world events, not just in isolation.
Yeah, it's about seeing how these different pieces of the puzzle are put together in market commentary.
Right. And it leaves us with a pretty interesting thought for you to chew on, doesn't it? If these huge real-world events, like the source mentioned elections, a pandemic, if they can completely shift or even just totally override what a technical signal like a golden cross seems to suggest, then what does that really tell us about the limits? The limitations of relying only on chart analysis, especially when markets can be so unpredictable. What does being truly well-informed actually mean when you're trying to balance the charts against, well, massive, unexpected global shifts?